listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. This is episode 122, where we talk with longtime friend of the podcast, Adam Boyce of Spartan Mode. Adam's an experienced firearms and edged weapons instructor, so we talk with him about what it's like having so many new shooters in the gun world, as well as the best way to set yourself up for success as a new shooter and how to train during a pandemic. Thanks for listening, and as always, we hope you enjoy episode 122 of Range Minded, the Adam Boyce interview, round 3. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and I am joined as always by
Steve Zimmerman. What's up, guys?
How's it going?
It's going well. It's just a nice day. Living the dream.
Yeah, it's finally cooled down a little bit, so the weather's a little bit more agreeable.
And it's less smoky over here. Is it less smoky over there?
Yeah, the smoke's finally burning off a little bit, thankfully, and things are good. We're moving right into fall. So, but we are not alone either. We are joined by our dear friend Adam Boyce.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm happy to be back on. This is the third time, I think, huh?
Yeah, I think so. We're happy to have you back on, too.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Always. Yeah, how are you faring so far?
Yeah, this COVID has been interesting for sure. I've kind of canceled a lot of seminars and stuff just for safety measures. But I'm excited for this thing to be over and get back to it.
Yeah, it's got to be tough because, I mean, I remember in your class there, you got to get physical and get close to people. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game. And if you don't do that, you're really not learning, you know? So.
Yeah. Yep.
Have you been able to teach it? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No. I was going to say, fortunate for me, my day job is a firearms instructor for a government agency. So I still have income, but there's a lot of guys out there that teach that are kind of suffering right now because of the COVID. So.
Yeah. It sure is a weird time. Like, I know we've said this before, but it's pretty interesting to be alive right now and have to deal with this.
Well, I think a lot of people don't think about like how it affects other people, like to a degree, like in terms of like, oh my gosh, like my world is rocked, but like so is everybody else's. And nobody thinks about that until it's like you kind of hear it from other people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Adam brought up a really good point. What about the guys and gals that teach any kind of defensive or martial art type of defensive situation? How are they surviving? If that's their only income, they're really pushed back or have to find some interesting ways to teach.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, several of the jiu-jitsu gyms that I've trained at over the years, they've kind of moved to a Skype there for a while. They were doing Skype or Zoom meetings, and it's just not quite the same. Luckily, gyms here in Idaho are open again, so we're able to roll and do stuff, but yeah, it's interesting times. It's something we didn't expect 6 months ago. I mean, 6 months ago, I was planning to go teach a seminar in Tokyo, Japan, and here we are. You know, everything's shut down and no travel.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I was going to try and sneak on the plane with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say because you were going to be in Japan and you were going to be teaching on the other side of the international date line, and unfortunately, it sounds like you had to postpone that.
Yeah, we're planning to reschedule once all this slows down, hopefully. But missed out a lot of opportunities. I mean, we had Tokyo. We were going to do the USCC Expo. I was going to be a presenter there.
Yeah.
It was going to be fun. Several other places throughout the country. I think I've canceled about 13 seminars because of COVID. So it's
so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm about done with COVID, I think.
Well, I was done a long time ago.
So are you able to teach virtually at all, or not really?
I could potentially. I'm an instructor, though, that I prefer to have hands-on and interact with the people I teach, especially with the stuff that I teach, because I'm teaching people how to use a blade for self-defense. I want to make sure that person fully grasps the reality and the necessity, or excuse me, the potential liability they have when they use it. So sure. I want to be there to make sure that they actually get that.
Yeah, you don't get to enjoy the bruised forearms via Skype.
Yeah, it's just not the same. I mean, you could study videos all day long, but without hands-on application, it's tough to fully grasp.
Sure, just like shooting, where it's like if you don't have the proper, the hands-on training, you're not going to be able to really to grasp what you're getting from a video. So that makes perfect sense.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of challenging, frustrating. I get reached out to all the time on my social media platforms. Hey, come teach a seminar in Canada or in Texas, the last few weeks. And it's like, well, sorry guys, I've got these other ones I need to reschedule first, and then we're just waiting to see what happens with travel. So kind of frustrating.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully it all opens up, because we want to see you teaching again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually for the folks maybe that don't know, who've never heard of Adam Boyce before, can you tell us, just kind of reintroduce yourself, tell us what you're all about and what you do. If you haven't picked it up already, Adam's a knife guy.
Yeah, so a little background about me. I was on the special response team, so basically a SWAT team for a government agency. I was a sniper and assaulter for several years, and then I moved into the training department. I'm now a firearms, heavy weapons, defensive tactics instructor. So that's what I do for my day job. On the side, I travel and teach seminars all over the country. It's called Martial Blade Concept. So I teach how to use a knife for self-defense, and that's kind of the primary thing that I teach on the side.
Very cool.
And by far, one of my favorite classes I've ever taken.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun having you in there. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great class. And you learn a lot, and you really kind of get a reality check on knives and the threat that they can face. I mean, how dangerous they really are, because you see stuff in the movies, where it's like, oh, somebody gets stabbed a bunch of times, but they're still up and fighting or whatever. But that's, not how the reality is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely different than what you see in the movies. I mean, you get stabbed, and we've talked about this in the past on previous podcasts with you, but you don't instantaneously burst into flames and end the fight just by getting stabbed. It takes a while to bleed to unconsciousness. So unless you target the correct targets on human anatomy, you're going to be in that fight for a while. And it's kind of an eye-opener for a lot of people when they get this hands-on training. For example, I do a lot of jiu-jitsu, and it's kind of fun to train with guys that are black belts or brown belts or purple belts, that when you incorporate the knife, even a training knife, it takes them totally out of their element, and they're surprised that, oh man, this isn't what I thought it was. So it's really easy to train in a manner that's maybe not the best for actual self-defense. So that's kind of one of the things we've been exploring and having fun with is you got to prepare for what is actuality, what's actually going to happen.
Sure. Is it the same with firearms folks too, who maybe have been used to training with firearms for a really long time and, maybe have some certifications and some heavy classes under their belt, and then they get a knife and it's a whole different story?
Yeah, I'd say knife and even gun stuff's kind of interesting. Train with guys with guns. You'll see a lot on Instagram where guys are doing the two-hand draw. So they'll take their support hand, draw it up here, and then they're taking their strong hand, clearing the gun and coming out and getting sub-second draws.
Right.
But think about the reality of that in an actual situation where you're being pressured. So for some of the training that we do with hands-on, try clearing the gun with both hands down here while somebody's trying to hit you in the head or choke you or grab your arm. It's very difficult. So kind of looking at even simple things like drawing your gun under pressure, now being able to draw it with one hand, clearing the garment, being out using this hand, the support hand still to be able to fight off or bend off an attacker. I mean, maybe you got a kid in your left hand, or maybe you're opening a door, or there's an object in the way you're moving. And there's a lot of stuff that's kind of fantasy out there that you see that's like, oh man, that's awesome. I want to learn how to do that. But when you actually put application hands on, it's different. You learn a lot. Yep. But knife thing, same thing. A lot of guys that come, first time they're gun guys, and they'll just say, well, I got a gun, I'll just shoot you. And, it's kind of funny because some of the guys I train with that have been at the seminars with me, I had one guy once say, well, he's good with a knife, but I'll just shoot him. And the guy's like, have you seen Adam shoot? Like, he will shoot you. He carries a gun too.
Yeah, you're a double threat. That's for sure.
Well, and I can, if you think that's hyperbole, I've been in the exact same range with Adam at the same time. I've seen him shoot, and so he's capable.
Well, if he's teaching other people, not just on handguns, but on a couple other weapon systems, I'm sure he's okay.
I'm all right. There's always room for improvement. I mean, there's Absolutely. A lot of other instructors and people that I look up to that I'm still learning from, but I think that's part of the journey too, is if you think you're good and you stop at that point, you're not good. You always got to be learning and continuing to grow. And that's kind of the mentality I have. I'm always a student. And
that's what makes you a great instructor. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk to you about today. So I'm sure you've noticed it too. But I've had a lot of people ask me about training and guns and CCL and stuff lately. And I mean, just a lot of people like from back home from Illinois or friends or family or whatever. They're, well, I want to get a firearm, or I want to get, my concealed carry. I'm concerned about what's going on, or about the pandemic, or this, that, or the other. I mean, people are really starting to realize that they have that right to defend themselves and to keep and bear arms if they'd like to. And it's interesting because it's like, can you recommend, they asked me, can you recommend a range or a place to go that's in Chicago or whatever? I'm like, well, first of all, there's like hardly any ranges in the city of Chicago. But there are a couple other ones. But have you noticed, like,
what are you talking about? There's a lot of outdoor ranges in the suburbs of Chicago.
I don't think those are
not
sanctioned.
What you want to be in. Yeah, that's not. Yeah.
Those are full contact ranges.
Yeah, those are active ranges. We'll put it that way. But it's. Have you experienced the same thing where just you got a ton of people asking you about training and firearms and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, people that I would never have expected before that were pretty much anti-gun or self-defense are now starting to reach out to me like, hey, when are you going to have a class again? When are you going to do some stuff? So with that in mind, I haven't really been teaching a lot of stuff outside of my government agency just because of COVID, in fears that I would have to cancel it. And I don't want to set up travel plans and all the fun stuff that goes with that.
Right.
So actually looking at doing something kind of as an entry level. I know there's about 5 million new gun owners in the last couple months, which is awesome.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we talked about that.
So one thing we've kind of looked at is a lot of these people buy guns. They have a little bit of ammo. They don't know how to dry fire. They don't know how to practice. They don't know how to clear a gun. They don't know. I mean, they're new. And one of the things I've been looking at doing is doing kind of a seminar that would incorporate knife and gun. So the gun would be all cert pistol. So the first 4 hours would be the knife stuff that I teach. And then the second afternoon would be all cert, how to draw your weapon, how to clear it, how to, function check, malfunctions, all of the basic stuff that goes with handling firearm safety rules, all that. And then that would be kind of a precursor or a prerequisite to take an actual live fire course with us. So I'm probably going to limit that to about 10 people, probably going to push that closer to October, give a little bit of time with this COVID to kind of simmer down a little bit. But
hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, CDC supposedly just came out yesterday and said that 6% of all COVID deaths were actual COVID cases, and then 94% supposedly had an average of 2.6 other elements involved with it.
So comorbidity or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know. I believe COVID is real, but I think people are getting to the point where they kind of want to get on with life a little bit. And I think some stuff like this might encourage people with the riots and all the chaos going on. And I think people are saying, hey, I need to defend myself. And maybe with the mortality rates being in higher age levels, 78, 80, I think is what they've been saying is kind of average.
Yeah.
I think people are going to start saying, let's get some training. So, I think we're going to push that, maybe 10-person class, keep it small comparative to what we've done in the past, and get some new gun owners some experience and some practical application and some safety mindsets with their pistols.
Well, and the benefit to those small classes, why do you want to limit it down to just 10 people?
So part of that, so the last seminar I taught was in San Francisco, and we had 40 people, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But when you have that many people in a room with contact, it's just challenging. I don't know if there's a legal. Should I have to worry about being sued potentially if someone catches COVID at a seminar? So we want to kind of keep it down to about 10, just for so we can space them out in the gym that we have. Additionally, just kind of minimize contact with people. So that's kind of the reason we're thinking of doing that. Yeah.
So one of the big questions though that I wanted to talk about is that, being a gun person and being in and around it, it's, I've got a lot of people out of state who are asking me like, hey, where, I want to get a gun. Where do I start? How do I train? Blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, I can kind of give you the basics and I can tell you the basic rules of firearm safety and all that. But, without being there in person, it's a little more difficult. And, I haven't lived in Illinois in 5 years, so I don't know, maybe necessarily what good ranges there are. What do you do, to find a good trainer or a good instructor that's maybe not in your general area? And like, let's say somebody from, the South or something, or the California, asks you, hey, where can I train in my state? Is there a way you kind of look to see what kind of trainers there are there and what, good training they can get?
Yeah, so there's two things I would recommend if it was out of state and I didn't know. So first off, I would say you need to check out Mike Seeklander. He has a couple programs online. One is the American Warrior Society. He's got, basic handgun, self-defense, shotgun. I mean, he's got a ton of stuff on there, first aid, kind of everything that you need to know to kind of keep yourself and family safe and protected. His yearly rate's like $100, and you get all access to all this stuff, which is phenomenal. But it kind of gives you a foot in the door to kind of understand, okay, here's the gear I need, here's what I need to do before you show up to a class kind of unknowingly. For example, I took a pistol class actually from Mike Seeklander a while back, and there was a gentleman in the course that had never shot a gun before. He showed up to the class, didn't have a belt, didn't have a holster, didn't have a gun, and he actually had never really shot, and Mike was able to kind of coach him along. And at the end of the class, he was really good, actually. I mean, he shot well, and he grasped it well. So sometimes not having the experience or bad habits is a great thing. Mm-hmm. So I would say that if you can't find an instructor, look at Mike Seeklander stuff online. He's got a ton of free stuff too if you don't want to spend any money. The second thing, as far as finding an actual instructor, I would recommend looking at the USCCA. They have an instructor locator, I believe, on their page where you can type in USCCA, type in the state, and it will bring up the instructors that are there. As far as what the USCCA teaches, so if you don't know what they do, they basically have kind of a legal protection program and a bunch of training that goes with how to use a firearm or knife or whatever the case may be, following the law, so that you don't start with a felony in your pocket, that you don't start with something that you're not supposed to. So you need to really learn that law. And the USCCA, again, really checks their instructors, and they teach valid stuff, some of the best stuff. I think, Steve, you're actually a USCCA instructor.
Yep.
I mean, case in point, they have some great guys that teach there. So,
and me.
Yeah, come on, man. Yeah, you're good. But that's probably where I would start, is I would find somebody like that, like USCCA, that I know really has good quality material that they put out. And that's where I would start if I didn't have any other knowledge. Because there's a lot of stuff out there. You can find a lot of training that's kind of the high zoo. Like we talked about earlier, maybe you see someone on Instagram that, man, he's got, 780,000 followers and he's so fast and he does all this stuff. But when you actually look at the application, maybe it doesn't apply to an actual self-defense situation. It might be a military tactic that might get you in trouble if you use it here in the United States, or potentially it's not going to work for a single person. I mean, it's not team room clearing tactics or whatever. Right. So you might want to look into that first. Just look at the USCCA or Mike Seeklander and see what they do. So that's what I would recommend if you don't.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I say I 100% agree with what the curriculum that USCCA has. It's relevant. It's up to date. Some of the other big organizations out there that teach concealed carry or even basic handgun stuff, they're so outdated, so boring and dry that you don't get anything out of it. I hated taking those classes as a student because it was stuff I already knew, and here I am paying $200 for a class that I learned nothing from, because I some of it's just common sense, and maybe that's just for being around guns, but some of it's just so old and irrelevant it doesn't even matter. But like you're saying, USCCA stuff it's spot on, and we use the same curriculum at the store in our basic and enhanced classes, because it's the best stuff we've found out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you can, I would say, even if you're looking to just kind of read about concealed carry and the mindset of it, the book that we give in our classes is a great book to just kind of get started, get you thinking before you even have to attend a class or whatever. You can get the book. What's it's called The Basics of Care, or the Fundamentals of Carrying, I think, right?
Yeah, hold on.
He's got it right there. Let's see.
He's got it in his library.
Hold on. Oh man, where did I put it? I can't remember where I put it. It's probably upstairs by my gun safe. I can't even remember the name of it.
I was going to say that's what I wanted to have the name right there, but I couldn't get it. So
yeah, I thought I had it in my desk drawer here, but I guess not. Oh well.
I'm going to look it up right now so we have it. It's Concealed Carry and Home Defense Fundamentals.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But no, that's a great book. It lays everything out really well. And it basically goes over most of the same stuff that we go over in our classes. Obviously, you're not getting the hands-on personal training if you're just reading a book, but it is a great primer to start, even if maybe you've bought a gun, but you've never even shot a gun before,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, some of the best instructors, they reach out and get some of the best people for the USCCA. Another aspect with why I like recommending them is because they do cover or provide that legal protection. Mm-hmm. In case you've seen all these things happening recently with self-defense and people having to use a gun for self-defense, and then the legal costs and everything that goes with it is pretty remarkable. It's pretty hefty. So even if it's a justified shooting, you're probably going to still have some legal fees and whatnot. So that's, again, another reason why I like USCCA.
Yeah, and some people may not understand. You're probably going to get arrested even though it was a good shoot. Until the cops can figure out what was going on, you might spend a night in jail.
Yeah, and you're going to get charged.
Think about that from the cops' situation too. He's responded to a shooting, and he doesn't know what's right or wrong. Police officers, for the most part, every time they respond, everybody's lying to them. So it's hard to know who's telling the truth. And as an officer, they've got to be thinking, man, I got to make it home safe tonight. I've got to make sure that everybody on scene is safe. It's my responsibility here. I'm the guy that's responsible for this. So it's very likely, like you say, that you might be in cuffs and your gun's going to get taken, and it might be an interesting night. So,
and it seems like now more than ever, they have to walk on eggshells on every aspect of their professional lives. Because if they open their car door wrong, somebody's going to sue them for something. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Well, and it's kind of interesting. We got so many people armchair quarterbacking all these incidents that are occurring. And you think about all these professional sport athletes, right? They have $1 million of cameras and replays and angles to replay something that just happened a few seconds ago. And a police officer has to respond and make a life or death situation where they don't get a recall. They don't get another opportunity. So, they've got to be very cognizant and knowing, hey, is this a threat? Is this not a threat? So be prepared to be in cuffs for a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's something a lot of people don't think about, the legal ramifications of it. They just think about, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do, and they don't think about what's going to happen after that.
Yep.
Well, and that's why I've been. We've talked about constitutional carry before on the show. That's why I've always been kind of in this weird dichotomy of absolutely the Second Amendment, we should be able to bear arms, but then there's that lack of legal understanding of where a lot of these folks are carrying, and they don't understand what brandishing might be, or they'll step across the line of when to deploy that firearm. Just, or they're going to shoot somebody for stealing their TV. Stuff like that just does not jive very well.
Yeah. Well, on that note, let me recommend a book too for the listeners. So there is an attorney. His name's Andrew Branca. He's got a podcast as well about the law of self-defense. He has a book called The Law of Self-Defense. You can pick it up on Amazon. I've actually taken his level 1 course, and it basically talks about here's the parameters that you need to use a gun or knife or whatever it may be in a self-defense case. So I'd highly recommend that. As far as if you're getting into protecting yourself, you don't have any experience, make sure you understand the laws. The cool thing with Andrew Branca's stuff is his book actually, I think it's on the 3rd or 4th revision now, but it will break it down to the state you're actually living in and say, here's, you can castle doctrine applies here or standard ground applies here. And so like Steve was saying, every state's different. Every jurisdiction's different. You could be in one state and go to a different county and the laws are different. So
yeah, absolutely.
Critical that you as the person carrying are justified and legally carrying where you can carry.
Yeah, and that's why it's tough, sometimes to recommend, advice or, hard and fast rules to people that, you might not be in the same state they are, because if we haven't lived in that state, we're not experts on the laws, and we're definitely not lawyers. So, it behooves you to do your own research in your own state, with regards to carrying and maybe storage in your home, those kinds of things. So,
well, just case in point, Mark, like what's it like from where you grew up in Illinois compared to Boise, Idaho.
It's a night and day difference. I mean, I've seen online people are waiting for, a long time to get their FOID card, which is, their firearm owner's ID card, which you need to have in Illinois to not only purchase and own a firearm, but also to buy ammo or to test fire a gun or even have a gun store employee hand over a gun for you to check out. So it's here is you just need a driver's license, and if you have your concealed carry permit, you don't even have to wait. You get to bypass the waiting period for a firearm, and there are silencers here and full autos, and it's a night and day difference, and so it's
and that's really on like the two extremes of the graph of firearms ownership and freedom, but every other state kind of lies in between those 2 points in reality.
Right, and the other thing I was going to say is that's just the basics.
Yeah,
that's just what you can and can't have, or what the access that you have to certain firearms or whatever. It's a little bit different story if you get into the nitty gritty of stuff. But when it comes in terms of concealed carry, there are so many more rules, and there are so many places that you can't carry. In Illinois, because I did get my concealed carry license in Illinois, and they listed off all the places that you couldn't carry, and it seemed like it would be easier to list the places you can't, or that you can, rather than you can't. Because
they would have saved some ink, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
it probably says in Illinois, it's like, you can carry at the gun range. The end. Period.
And your house and your car, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And even inside Idaho, like Adam was saying, there's some stuff that really needs to be taught to you, or you need to seek it out as a gun owner. I mean, it's our responsibility as carriers to understand the law, because ignorance is not a defense, and your ignorance is going to cost you a lot of money if you don't understand what's going down. So you need to find somebody that can teach you that stuff, and that's why it's so important to find somebody that has the ability to teach you the knowledge, that has the knowledge itself, and has the credibility, to share that information with you.
And I think that's a valid point. I mean, there's a lot of friends of mine that say, I don't need to learn how to use a firearm. My uncle or my cousin or my brother-in-law is police officer, or he's been in the military. He's Air Force or whatever it is.
Yeah, Air Force. There's a guy that can teach you some firearm skills.
There's some good guys, but you just don't know. It's like, just because you have military law enforcement experience doesn't necessarily mean that you're good and capable. I mean, you could have been in logistics in the military and never really fired a gun. I mean, so it's important that you kind of make sure that whoever you're going to trust your knowledge and abilities to, that you're going to learn from, and the potential life or death, actually has the skills and knowledge that you need. So again, that's why I recommend USCCA. They're good stuff. So
and kind of going off of that, when let's say you go to a gun range, and maybe you're looking at a firearm for the first time, or you're looking to sign up for a class in person, what do you look for when you go? Because you travel a bunch, and I'm sure you go to gun shops in different states around the country. What do you look for? What do you notice in good gun shops and maybe some not so good gun shops?
So a couple of things that I like to look for or recommend when people go first time is I like to go to a range or place, or suggest that they go to a place where they actually let you test fire the gun. So not necessarily the one you're buying, but one like it. I believe you guys do that at Independence.
We sure do.
I know a couple shops here. There's a shop here in town that has some that you can rent. You kind of want to go test fire a few different ones, see what actually fits good in your hand, what you can manage. But that's a couple things I'd look at. As far as women, that's one thing I would recommend not doing. Because most men are going to say, you need something that's always reliable. So I'm going to give you the snub nose revolver, and you're going to love it. And then they go to pull it, and it ticks real hard, and it's heavy, and the trigger's heavy. And I mean, so I would actually probably recommend, before you buy one, I would look at taking a class from maybe guys like you guys at Independence Indoor Gun Range or USCCA, and say, hey, I don't have a gun. What do you have to recommend? Or let me borrow. And a lot of instructors will have extra guns that they can loan you.
Yeah, so or you can even rent a firearm for a class.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. In our academy, we bought like 12 EZs, that 380 EZ from Smith & Wesson, just because of the usability of it. And so you're not scaring away new shooters or timid shooters or whatever. There's always an avenue, and that's another thing that you brought up. It kind of touches on it with this is a good instructor is going to kind of lead you to a firearm that may work, and keep you away from something that's probably not going to work.
Yep. And something fun I like to do. So like I told you, for my day job, I'm a firearms and heavy weapons instructor. So I've been around guns a long time. I've been, like I said, I was on the SRT as a sniper and assaulter for multiple years. So I know a little bit about guns. I shot some competitive matches and stuff. And anyway, I like to go into a store sometimes and pretend like I don't know anything and just say, hey, what do you recommend? I don't know anything about guns. What do you recommend? And the recommendations you get sometimes are like, whoa, yeah, that's not what I would recommend somebody that's never shot a gun before. But yeah, just be careful where you go. Some you got to realize sometimes, I'm not going to mention store names, but maybe some big sports stores. You might go into them and the kid that's working behind the counter thinks he knows a lot, but he might have just been working apparel the day before, or he might have been, the knife counter, or not really know much, but he might try to sell you something. So
I've had that experience actually at a big box sporting goods store. We went in there and looked at a gun, and they'd pulled somebody from the shoe section.
Oh,
that had literally never. And I was with a buddy of mine that has a pretty good knowledge of firearms, and he asked him for something 1911 or something. And the guy's like, "Which one's that?" And it was very difficult for my buddy to not come unglued. He eventually did. Like he let him know how pointless the conversations were, and we left.
Mm-hmm. And no fault of the employee there. I mean, they said,
he did the best he could.
Yeah, but just realize that if you're going to a gun store and you don't have a lot of knowledge about a particular firearm, they might be incentivized to sell it. Maybe I'm not gonna say gun brands, but maybe one company saying, "Hey, we'll give you this if you sell this many guns." So.
Well, and I can tell you right now, selling guns on the retail side, there are manufacturers or distributors that say, hey, to boost numbers, right? They say, hey, you sell so many of this particular gun, you earn points and you can trade them in for spiffs on the other side. And I've been the recipient of that. But I try to not let that bias. I always ask questions and find out what they wanted.
Yeah.
And that's what a real salesman should be doing anyways.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. So you mentioned Adam, as a woman, if
Adam's not a woman.
No, actually, I phrased that a little wrong. But you mentioned that the game's a little bit different for women than for men, just in terms of what people are going to recommend. What could you recommend a female who wants to get into shooting or buy their first firearm? Do you have any kind of specific advice for them to follow?
So that's going to depend. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody's body mechanics are different, size, shape, what they want to do with the firearm. So it's all going to be independent of each individual. So I don't really say this gun is perfect for a woman or this gun's perfect for a man.
Sure.
They need to go experience it and feel it for themselves. Because, there's guys that like Ferraris and there's guys that like Porsches and there's guys that like, I don't know, a Pinto or whatever it is. So you gotta try it out yourself. So I will not say, hey, this is better for you.
Sure.
Until we've had an opportunity to do it.
But in terms
there's some guns that
go ahead.
There's some guns I prefer that I like. The Glock 4, was it the 43X with the single stack with the
long slide?
Longer slide. That's a great one that you can conceal a little bit better, that has a little bit more rounds with it. That's one I'd recommend. A Glock 19 is something I carry, but it might not be the best choice for a female that likes to dress a little nicer and can't conceal it. So again, it's going to depend on what she dresses like, what her body's like, and what she's going to use it for. Is she going to stuff it in a purse? Is she going to pack it on her? Is she going to keep it in the car? There's a lot of factors there as far as being able to recommend one particular firearm.
So just in terms of being a woman, do you recommend anything, maybe not necessarily specifically firearms related, but with maybe what to look for in a gun store if somebody's pointing you the wrong direction, or maybe not giving you the respect that you deserve just as someone who wants to own firearms?
So one thing I'd actually recommend for women, if they don't have an experience, Tatiana Whitlock if you haven't seen her stuff, she's a great firearms instructor, and she has some videos and stuff out there for women on this. So I'd check her stuff out if I was a female and was kind of hesitant what to look for. I'm not a lady, even though you said I'm a woman.
As a woman.
His words were as a woman.
As a woman, that was his actual words. Yes. So I can't. I don't know what it's like. I'm 6'2", 220 pounds. So it's a little bit different experience when I go into a gun store than it would be for a female that weighs 120 pounds at 5'2" or whatever it may be. So, I'd recommend other instructors reach out to Tatiana or check out her stuff online. That's probably where I would start if I was a female.
Great. Yeah, because I know we do have some listeners who are female, and maybe some of our listeners, female friends or wives or girlfriends or sisters or moms or whoever want to get into shooting, but it's since none of us are females, it's a little bit tougher to give that specific advice, and sometimes depending on the shop or whatever, women can have it tougher than men, and with in an experience at a gun store. So.
Well, I think it could be intimidating for them too. You're going into a place that's primarily men, and in the past, it's always been like, oh, female holsters. Well, we'll just paint it pink, and it's the exact same geometry. It's like, well, that doesn't work for female hips, or it doesn't conceal on them as well. So, I would, like I said, I haven't had the experience of being a woman, so I can't say that, but I would recommend, like I said, Tatiana, or there's a bunch of other great female instructors out there. So.
Cool. That's awesome.
And I think that's important to note too, that stereotypically the shooting sports has been male for years, and it's been geared, a little bit more to the lady shooters in the last maybe 5 years or so, maybe even 10 years. Yeah. And but it's still kind of scary for these gals, especially if they're new to it. For me, like, I can't get my wife to come to the range hardly ever. It just doesn't appeal to her. But I'm sure there's other guys that are married or that have girlfriends that would love to have a new shooting buddy. But they're so poor at teaching these skills that these ladies, that they're struggling. And so finding a place to go, a place of, we have lady instructors that, we specifically target ladies only classes for those shooters. And it can be scary. Like you're saying, it can be scary for these gals.
I think so, and one thing you'll find with men in particular, from what I understand from my female friends that shoot, is guys, we're kind of egotistical sometimes. We like to show how much we know. Yeah, nicely put. That's kind of what we do. We like to tell everybody how much we know. There's actually a great program here in Idaho Falls. It's Women of Caliber, and I believe they have them all over. But it's basically a shooting group of women, and they get out and train and shoot matches together and stuff. And I think it's a great introductory without having all that intimidation of having all the guys, beating their chest and putting your place. But I'd look for stuff like that, I think, if I was trying to get a spouse or a female friend in the shooting community.
Cool. No, that's great. That's great advice. So my next question is, though, and Steve and I talked about this, I think, an episode or two ago, is that, if you, let's say you're just into shooting, you've been into shooting for a while, but you're not an instructor or anything. It is possible to, take somebody shooting. We always tell people to take people shooting. And we want to make sure that their first experience is, safe and enjoyable and instills confidence in them. What do you recommend to somebody who's just maybe your average shooter? And somebody comes up to them, a friend of theirs or something, says they want to get into firearms. They want to, maybe get their own firearm, or they want to go shooting for the first time. What are your recommendations to make that first experience, a good one, just as an average person?
Let's start with that. So I remember years ago, when I first got into shooting, I had a good friend of mine that was an avid hunter, and from the time he was a young boy, he had always been hunting. And I knew the basic firearm safety rules. Never, all guns are always loaded. Never point your gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger. Be sure of your back's off from what lies beyond. I knew that stuff. But when I went with him, I was pretty nervous. And he's like, hey, I've done this my whole life. We'll be good. And I remember we were going to shoot coyotes. And he had a 17 HMR. And when he went to go over a fence, he pointed his muzzle right at me.
Oh, geez.
And this is somebody that had experience his whole life. So I would really reiterate with whoever you're going with is safety is king. I mean, that's safety first, safety last. That's our primary thing. Let's have fun. Let's be safe. So they need to know, whoever's going to go with you, especially if you're a new shooter, that you're never going to point that gun at anybody. You're going to never point it in an unsafe direction. You're going to keep your finger off the trigger, and you're going to be sure of what's beyond whatever you're shooting. Just those basic four. That's what I'd recommend. I would say go shoot some paper to start off with. Steel is a lot of fun, but it can ingrain a lot of bad habits, because with steel targets, what you start doing is you start looking over your sights and start anticipating that shot, or I hit it. So I'd say just kind of simple paper drills, maybe even set up some balloon reactionary targets, something that's kind of fun to shoot. But
yeah,
that's probably what I'd recommend if you're going to go. Just focus on safety and go from there.
Yeah.
And I think too, along with that, know your audience, I guess, know who you're taking. And if they haven't done a lot of shooting, don't bring out something big because you enjoy shooting and you think they're going to think it's awesome too. Take some 22s, take something that recoils really light, take an AR-15, let them know, hey, this looks like a big scary gun, but it doesn't recoil, and it's going to be way more fun. And if you have access to suppressors, that would help a lot more too.
I think you're spot on with that. You know, like I said, as a sniper and assaulter, I got to shoot some really cool guns for a living. I get to teach a lot of cool guns for a living. But if I was to take somebody that was brand new that never shot before, I would take a suppressed 22 long rifle. And it is just fun to shoot. It's a good experience, and I think you nailed it on the head there with that, Steve. It needs to be fun and enjoyable, and don't scare them. They won't want to shoot again. If you take them out and shoot a 12 gauge or whatever for their first experience, they might not enjoy shooting. So
yeah, I've seen it at the range. You know, when I officiated on the range all the time, I'd seen boyfriends taking girlfriends, or maybe first dates even. I don't know what it was, but you could see he'd get out, oh, let's shoot this 357 or a 454 Casull or something huge. And then honestly, I've seen it with the Desert Eagle too. They'd rent the Desert Eagle out there for this little gal because they think it's going to be awesome to watch her shoot it, and it's over.
Yeah, or it's going to be funny, and it's just like that's not the best way to introduce somebody to shooting, and you might traumatize somebody for life, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Yeah. No, I think those are all spot on points. I think that's perfect. Everybody I've started shooting with has always been a 22, and you can usually read if somebody's comfortable with it and move up, relatively quickly. It's like, okay, cool. Like I get it or whatever. There was one guy, a good friend of mine, had never shot a gun before, but was a natural athlete, kind of had that, that biomechanical kind of movement of how to shoot and all that pretty well ingrained. And we were there at the range for about an hour and a half or so. And by the end, he was shooting an AK and he was loving it.
Yeah.
Some people are just recoil junkies.
That's true. Very true.
That's one of the things I enjoy most is when people get to shoot a gun for the first time and the reaction is kind of like, hey, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And when they smell that gunpowder and they get the addiction to that gunpowder, like there's nothing else like it. It's an experience for everybody. So I think you're right. Keep it fun, have fun with it, and let more people come in the community. The more people that are in the community that are safe and good with a firearm, the better.
Yeah,
agreed.
Well, and you mentioned the 5 million new gun owners.
Yeah,
I'm guessing there's a huge portion of those that have purchased firearms for defensive use only, and so they don't understand the recreational side of it at all. They just see it as, well, I've read reports of how these guns kill people, and that's why I want a gun just for my defense. But there's a whole nother side to it that they're completely missing, that they could actually be having a lot more fun, and it's up to us as the 2A community to get them out of that mindset of defensive only. It's not defensive only. You could have a lot more fun if you just come out of your shell a little bit. Let's go shooting.
Yeah, and you'll be better. You'll be more skilled. You'll be more comfortable. You'll be more confident with the firearm you have.
Absolutely.
Another question that I've gotten a bit too is that, not only in addition to having a firearm, what other gear do I need? And I've kind of told them the basics or whatever, but I want to get your take on it, Adam. What do you think that, let's say somebody buys a Glock 19 or any kind of semi-automatic pistol. What else do you recommend that people get in addition to that? Because you can't just, have the gun and that's it,
Yeah, so as far as if you're going to carry a gun, one thing you need to make sure that you have is a great holster, something that will keep that trigger from being pressed. You don't want to have an AD in your leg or in your appendix if you're carrying appendix. That's a bad day. So make sure that you have something. I highly recommend a Kydex holster. I'm a big fan of Tier 1 Concealment. They make really good holsters. Victory Operational Works makes some good stuff here too locally. I would look for something like that. Initially when you start, I did something that's stiff like that, something that's not leather that needs maintenance and whatnot. Another thing is a good belt. A lot of people will buy a nice holster, they have a nice gun, and then they just have a regular everyday belt, and it sags. And when you go to draw, everything moves.
Yeah.
So I'd make sure I'd have something that supports that gun and keeps it where it needs to be. One of the things that I do when I train jiu-jitsu is we'll put a knife and a gun and other items on us, and then while we're rolling, we'll reach for the gun and grab for that. And so the actual carry gun I carry, I've tested and made sure that it will stay in place. So if you do that, make sure that the gun is unloaded. I have a safety chamber plug that we put in the barrel, and we put that on there to make sure that it's not going to take a live round, but make sure your equipment's going to stay on you. As far as the gun goes, that's what I'd recommend. I like to stick to factory. I don't do trigger jobs on any of my concealed carry guns. I don't do any extra magazines. I stay with the Glock or whatever gun I'm carrying. I stay with that magazine. Mm-hmm. As far as extra equipment, I always have a flashlight on me. I have a purpose self-defense pocket knife, a folder, and a fixed blade depending on where I'm going. And then I always carry a tourniquet. And I've been kind of back and forth on which kind I carry. I attended a seminar with Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman a while back. He's the author of On Combat and On Killing. And he and the other instructors there highly recommend the SWAT T tourniquet. I've carried a cat tourniquet for a long time. But I like the SWAT T because it's basically the size of a wallet, and you can stick it in your back pocket or front pocket and always have a tourniquet on you. You probably have a higher likelihood of using a tourniquet than you do your actual firearm.
Yeah, sure.
I'd recommend that. A lot of people have the cool stuff, but they don't carry stuff that they might need if their loved one gets in a car accident and they need to put a tourniquet on their arm or whatever. So those are the things I'd carry. A good self-defense gun with a holster and sheath, a good flashlight, because you'll use that all the time, and it can be used as an impact weapon as well. A good knife and a tourniquet. So those are the minimum things that I'd carry where I can carry them.
It's great. Yeah, it's because it's not just about the gun. There's a lot more to it to be kind of prepared and ready for any situation. Like you said, especially if maybe you're walking through a city at night or something like that and you need to shine some light on somebody or whatever, that could be enough to deter somebody to, abandon you as a target,
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me of one thing I've been carrying the last few months since a lot of these attacks with the riots and whatnot, where a gun isn't justified. I've been packing pepper spray as well. So that's been something I carry in my front pocket as well.
Oh, okay.
Because it might not go to that full level, but yeah,
hopefully you never have to use
something
it.
I carry. Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, and that's a good point though, that all those, you have to be cognizant if you're traveling of what may or may not be allowed in the place you're carrying at, or the place you're visiting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to go to California and take a gun with you that maybe you drove into the state and it's not on the registry or on the approved list, the DOJ list. Yeah, that your vacation to California is going to be a lot longer.
You're gonna have a bad day
if they catch you.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, Steve, do you have any questions for Adam?
No, I don't know. I think we covered a lot. I think
we did. We covered a lot, and it's because Adam is a wealth of knowledge and a great instructor and has some great advice.
Yeah, we kind of like him.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So are you rescheduling any plans for 2021 yet? I know you said you were kind of waiting until October, but are you, at least looking ahead to the future?
Yeah, so a couple that are for sure, if it happens, the USCCA Expo that's going to happen in Nashville, Tennessee. If that happens, I am on the docket to teach a couple classes there again.
Have they scheduled that date?
Yes, I think it's May, if I remember right. It's March or May, one of those two.
I'm gonna have to block out some time.
Yeah,
I would like to go to that. Yeah,
it's a great expo. Any of you listeners out there that haven't been to that, it's phenomenal. Some of the best instructors they'll bring into that, and it's just fun. It's kind of like a miniature version of the SHOT Show, as far as the
but built for consumers. That's the other thing.
Yeah. So it's a good time. And then from there, we want to reschedule Tokyo, but again, international travel right now is a little interesting. I've had some reach out from Canada. That hasn't been on the list, but it's one that I'm trying to shoot for as well. So for sure, we're looking at Pennsylvania. I got a couple places there, a place in Maine that we're looking at teaching, Arizona again, Rexburg, Idaho Falls, Honolulu, Hawaii's actually popped up. A lot of interest there. So dang it, I might have to go do that one.
Tough life.
Yeah. But if this COVID continues the way it is, which who knows, we don't know what to expect. I'm probably going to focus just more on the local stuff for a little bit. Kind of like I said, just kind of getting the new shooters familiar, and then moving from there to kind of basic and courses from there. So
cool. Well,
cross my fingers we can travel again.
If somebody wants to keep track of what you're doing and all that, how can people find you online or get a hold of you?
Okay, so the best way to find me is on Instagram at Spartan.mode. So that's my Instagram. Facebook at Spartan Mode LLC or Adam Boyce. Or you can find me on my website at www.spartanmode.com. I don't know if you have to say www anymore, but it's spartanmode.com. That's my website.
You better cover all your bases. That's all. That's the important part.
Well, what does the www stand for?
World Wide Web.
Oh, come on.
You didn't know that?
I did know that.
Okay. Were you trying to test Adam to see if he knew that?
That's exactly.
Well, I saved you, so you're welcome.
But on that website too, at the bottom when you go to it, there's a link there to get on the email list. So that's one thing I didn't mention, but I have a knife design with Tops Knives. We actually sold out of it a couple times now. So the first run, the Goji 1 and then the Goji 2, we sold that recently. So there's a lot of interest in that. That's probably going to be coming back again soon.
And it's a badass knife.
It's a great knife. And then also there was a knife that we designed. I was going to be on the History Channel for a show called Knife or Death a few years ago. That fell through, but the blade that we designed was a big gununting. It's a big Filipino fighting sword, and we're looking at maybe making that go into production as well.
That's cool.
Knives as well. So if you want to find out about those or hear when those come out, again, the Gogi 2 sells out pretty fast, so you want to be on the email list if you want one of those. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool plug.
Well, and you already answered the 5 questions like an episode or two ago, so I think you've dodged the bullet on that, right, Steve?
Yeah.
So if you want to know the answers to Adam's 5 questions, go back and check on his last episode. But anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to mention or that you wanted to cover this time, Adam?
The world's crazy and nobody's going to protect you or your family but yourself. So make sure you are training and staying physically and mentally capable. Avoid fights at all costs and be ready because the fight it's coming. Cool. I wish it wasn't, but it is.
Wise words. Agree. So cool. Well, we'll let you go for now. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions for Adam, you can get a hold of him at spartanmode.com and Spartan.mode on Instagram, and you can let us know what you think too, or we can hook you up with Adam at podcast@iishooting.com, or you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Range Minded Podcast. So thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Take somebody shooting.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.